What was this ethereal music amidst the mechanical death rattle of a dying world eater? This faint, melodic hum that resonated not with machinery, but with life. And why did the woman at its chaotic heart seem both its prisoner and its source, even as the crimson streaks of Cathar warships began to carve fresh scars across the void, accelerating towards her, towards an unknown prize? The air within the failing heart of the Silosian terraforming device was a cacophony of shrieking alarms and the groan of tortured metal. Emergency lights pulsed erratically, casting blood-red shadows that danced with the emerald green of leaking coolant. Captain Thaddeus Lumen, his peacekeeper uniform already smudged with grime and hydraulic fluid, gritted his teeth against the deck plates shuddering beneath his boots. The rescue beacon had been faint, almost swallowed by the electromagnetic chaos, but it was unmistakably a sign of life, deep within a structure that was actively tearing itself apart. Silos Prime was supposed to be undergoing its final reclamation sequence, a gentle nudge towards becoming a garden world. Instead, this ancient, colossal device, millennia older than any human understanding of terraforming, had gone rogue, its core collapsing into a gravitational nightmare. His mission was simple: locate survivors, if any, and get out. The "if any" was the part that gnawed at him. The energy readings were off the charts, lethal. He forced open a buckled hatch, the metal screaming in protest, and stepped into a chamber that defied easy description. It was vast, spherical, and crisscrossed with conduits that pulsed with an unhealthy, erratic light. At its very center, suspended in a web of flickering energy tendrils, was a figure. Female humanoid, but definitely not human. Her skin possessed a pearlescent sheen, catching the strobing lights like a captive moon. Long, dark hair, the color of twilight, fanned around her as if she were submerged in water, though the atmosphere was thin and acrid. And then he heard it, beneath the mechanical din, a faint, incredibly pure musical hum, seeming to emanate directly from her. It was a sound so out of place in this metal tomb that it sent a shiver down his spine, a melody of profound serenity amidst utter pandemonium. She was unconscious, or perhaps in some kind of stasis. One of the energy tendrils was wrapped tighter around her torso, and Thaddeus could see faint, scorch-like marks beginning to appear on the strange, flexible material of her attire near the contact point. The malfunctioning core was clearly harming her. This was no ordinary prisoner. The way she was held, the almost reverent, if failing, focus of the machinery around her, hinted at something far more complex than simple captivity. He had to get her out. That was the peacekeeper creed. The core of his being: protect life, wherever found, however strange. The Cathar closing in were just another complication. Their marauding fleets were a constant plague on the outer rim, always drawn to chaos, always seeking to exploit. Thaddeus Lumen moved with the practiced urgency of a man long familiar with imminent destruction. He unslung his multi-tool, its beam quickly analyzing the energy tendrils. Unstable, high-energy particle flow. His suit's AI Jory reported calmly in his ear. Localized gravitic distortion increasing around the subject. Captain, structural integrity of this chamber is failing. Recommend immediate extraction, noted Jory. Working on it. Thaddeus muttered, his gaze fixed on the woman. The faint musical hum emanating from her seemed to intensify slightly as he drew closer, a subtle shift in its harmonic structure, almost like a question. He had to sever the primary tendril, the one that seemed to be actively damaging her. It was a risk. The backlash could be immense. He set his tool to emit a focused, disruptive pulse, shielding his eyes as he aimed. "Brace yourself," he said, though she couldn't hear him. The pulse hit the tendril, and for a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, with a violent snap, it recoiled, whipping away like a severed snake. The other tendrils flickered, their hold loosening. The woman slumped slightly, her hum wavering, almost sighing. Alarms blared louder as the core protested the interference. Debris began to rain down from the dome above. "Time to go," Thaddeus shouted, holstering his tool and lunging forward. He reached her just as a section of the upper gantry tore loose, crashing down where he'd stood moments before. He scooped her into his arms. She was surprisingly light. Yet her form felt dense, resilient. Her skin was cool to the touch, and the musical hum vibrated against his chest, a strange, intimate sensation. He turned, scanning for the exit, the path already shifting as the station crumbled. As he navigated the treacherous, collapsing corridors, she began to stir. Her eyes, when they opened, were a startling shade of amethyst, wide and luminous in the dim light. They focused on him, not with immediate fear, but with a profound, searching intensity. Her lips, a shade darker than her skin, parted and a single, melodic syllable escaped, a sound like a plucked string instrument. It wasn't a language he knew, but the intent felt like a question, a plea. "Easy now," Thaddeus said, his voice perhaps rougher than he intended. "I'm Captain Thaddeus Lumen, Galactic Peacekeepers. I'm getting you out of here." She blinked slowly, then her gaze drifted to the crumbling architecture around them. A new sound joined her hum, a lower, mournful note. Suddenly, she pushed lightly against his chest, not to escape, but to sit up slightly. Her hands, slender and elegant, moved in a complex, flowing gesture, tracing patterns in the air. "What are you doing?" Thaddeus asked, still moving, dodging falling girders. "There's no time for whatever that is." Her amethyst eyes flashed back to him, a hint of something annoyance, or perhaps the distress of an interrupted, vital act. She spoke again, a short stream of those musical syllables, the tone insistent. It was clear she valued this ritual, even in the face of death. This was his first brush with her cultural quirk, the preference for complex ceremony over stark practicality. Jory's voice cut in, "Captain, K-Thar scout vessel just broke atmosphere. It's on an intercept course with this facility's energy signature. Estimated arrival at our position 3 minutes. Understood, Jory. Any chance our ride is still waiting? Is Serenity? Is holding position cloaked, but they can't maintain it indefinitely with the K-Thar so close. They report extreme gravitic shear around the planet. Just another Tuesday." Thaddeus grunted, picking up his pace. The alien woman in his arms went still, her hum dropping to a barely perceptible thrum, her head tilted, as if listening to something beyond the clang of failing machinery and Jory's reports. He wondered if she sensed the K-Thar. The way her eyes narrowed, a flicker of something cold and knowing in their depths, suggested she was far more than just a passive victim. Perhaps a hint of that shadow diplomat. Roll the pre-mission briefing had vaguely alluded to for any unknown high-value individuals in this sector. They reached the emergency airlock he'd used to enter, or what was left of it. The outer doors were buckled, but the inner ones still held. "Jory, can you force them?" "Attempting override now, Captain. It will take a moment. The K-Thar are hailing the facility, demanding surrender of biological assets." Thaddeus swore under his breath. Biological assets. That's what she was to them. He glanced down at the woman. Her eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow. The faint hum was almost gone. The earlier scorch marks on her attire seemed to be mirrored by a faint redness on her skin beneath. She was injured, more than he initially thought. Her rapid healing, if she possessed it, hadn't kicked in yet or was being suppressed by the core's energies, or her current state. The inner airlock doors hissed open with a groan. Beyond them lay the relative safety of his breaching pod, still clinging precariously to the station's hull. Almost there. He told her, then to Jory, "Tell the Serenity to prep for immediate emergency retrieval, and let them know I have a guest." As he strapped her into the auxiliary crash couch in the tiny pod, her eyes fluttered open again. She reached out a hand, not towards him, but towards the dying core of the Solosian device, visible through the reinforced viewport. A single, clear note, heartbreakingly sad, sounded from her, before a wave of tremors shook the pod violently. "K-Thar are firing on the station's remnants," Jory announced, her usually calm voice tinged with urgency. "They're targeting the core section. Get us out of here, Jory!" Maximum thrust. Thaddeus slammed the pod's hatch, sealing them in just as another explosion rocked their precarious perch. The pod's engine screamed, tearing them away from the disintegrating station and into the chaotic space battlefield that was rapidly forming. Through the viewport, Thaddeus saw the dark, insectoid shapes of K-Thar cruisers swarming like vultures. They hadn't been seen, not yet, but it was only a matter of time. The woman beside him let out a soft gasp, her hand flying to her chest, her hum flickering like a dying candle. He realized, with a jolt, that her distress wasn't just from the explosions, it was linked to the destruction of the ancient device. The escape from Xylos Prime was a blur of G-forces and near misses. Thaddeus's small breaching pod, agile but unshielded against capital ship weaponry, weaved through a storm of debris and K-Thar fighter patrols. The alien woman, whose name he still didn't know, remained conscious, her amethyst eyes tracking the K-Thar ships with an unnerving focus. Her faint hum had returned, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the pod's small cabin, oddly calming amidst the chaos. "Jory, Status on the Serenity. Thaddeus barked, wrestling with the controls as a plasma bolt seared past their viewport. The Serenity is engaging Cathar fighters to create an escape window, Captain. They're taking heavy fire. They advise we make for the Delphian Nebula. Its sensor-baffling properties should give us cover. The Delphian Nebula. That's uncharted, dangerous territory. It's our only viable option, Captain. The Cathar have blockaded all other routes. Thaddeus glanced at his passenger. Her expression was unreadable, but her hum deepened, a subtle chord change that seemed to resonate with the nebula's ominous reputation. He made the call? All right. Jory, plot a course for the Delphian Nebula. Best speed. They broke free of the main Cathar engagement, but a squadron of their needle-nosed interceptors peeled off, clearly tracking their unique energy signature or hers. The nebula loomed ahead, a vast, swirling cloud of iridescent gas and dark matter, beautiful and deadly. As they plunged into its embrace, the Cathar pursuit faltered, their sensors likely struggling with the nebula's chaotic energies. Silence, or what passed for it in the humming pod, descended. Thaddeus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He unstrapped himself and turned to the woman. Are you all right? She looked at him, then slowly nodded. She pointed to herself. Lyra Nova, she said, her voice soft, the syllables flowing like her earlier musical utterances, but this time clearly a name. Lyra Nova, Thaddeus repeated. I'm Thaddeus Lumen. He offered a hand, a gesture of peace. She regarded his hand for a moment, then tentatively placed her own in it. Her skin was cool, smooth, and the contact sent a faint tingle up his arm, accompanied by a subtle intensification of her hum. It wasn't unpleasant. Why were you in that device, Lyra Nova? She withdrew her hand, her gaze turning distant. She spoke, a longer sentence this time, her language flowing and complex. Jory's voice interjected, Captain, I am attempting to build a translation matrix based on her vocal patterns and common linguistic structures. It will take time. Lyra seemed to understand the lack of comprehension. She sighed, a sound like wind chimes, and then pointed towards the direction they'd come from, then made a gesture of containment, of being trapped. Her expression was somber. The Cathar. Thaddeus said. They seemed to know you were there. They called you a biological asset. At the mention of the Cathar, a flicker of something cold and hard entered Lyra's eyes. Her hum sharpened, losing some of its melodic quality, becoming almost a warning growl. She shook her head vehemently and spoke a single, sharp word in her tongue. Jory, anything. The word strongly correlates with abomination, or defiler's captain. Thaddeus nodded grimly. My feelings exactly. He found a med kit. You were injured. Those energy tendrils. Lyra touched the scorched fabric on her shoulder, then the skin beneath. He saw a faint redness, but it seemed less pronounced than before. She met his eyes and then, to his astonishment, the redness visibly faded, the skin smoothing out, leaving no trace of injury within seconds. Her hum pulsed gently, like a soft sigh of relief. Incredible. Thaddeus breathed. You heal that fast. Lyra nodded, a small, almost shy smile touching her lips. She then traced a finger over her own heart, then outwards, a gesture that seemed to encompass her whole being. Her hum resonated with a quiet pride. This was her nature, a deep dweller, as her kind were known in whispers across the star charts, beings of profound resilience. But he also remembered the pre-mission intel rapid healing. But with a critical weakness, he wondered what that could be. They needed a place to hide, to repair minor damage the pod had sustained, and to figure out their next move. The Delphian Nebula, while offering cover, was full of its own hazards, gravitic anomalies, rogue planetoids, and whispers of ancient, forgotten structures. Jory, scan for any stable celestial bodies, preferably with some kind of shelter. A cave, ruins, anything. Scanning, Captain. There's a small, uncharted moonlet deeper within the nebula. Readings indicate unusual energy signatures, possibly artificial. And, Captain, there are ancient ruins on its surface. Very old. Predating known galactic civilizations. Sounds promising, or incredibly dangerous. Thaddeus mused. Let's check it out. Lyra Nova, we're gonna find a place to rest, to think. Lyra watched him, her head tilted. Then, she began a series of slow, deliberate movements with her hands and body, almost a miniature dance, her hum weaving a complex, accompanying melody. It was another ritual, Thaddeus realized, perhaps one for safe passage or seeking guidance. He suppressed his impatience. Her ways were strange, but she had just survived something that should have killed anyone. Maybe there was something to her rituals. As they approached the moonlet, its surface scarred with craters and jagged, crystalline formations. Jory's voice came again. Captain, the energy signatures are concentrated around a large, partially buried structure. It appears to be some kind of temple or repository. The architecture is unlike anything in the database. Thaddeus landed the pod carefully in the shadow of a colossal, broken archway. The air outside was thin but breathable, smelling of ozone and ancient dust. As they disembarked, Lyra paused at the threshold of the ruin, her hum deepening, resonating with the very stones around them. She closed her eyes, her hands outstretched as if sensing the echoes of the past. This place, she whispered, her first words in heavily accented, but understandable galactic standard, eat calls. Before Thaddeus could respond, a tremor ran through the ground, not violent but deep and unsettling. Dust sifted from the archway above. Lyra stumbled, and Thaddeus instinctively reached out to steady her. At the same moment, a section of the temple wall nearby pulsed with a strange, inner light. Symbols, previously invisible, blazed into existence on its surface, forming an intricate, circular pattern. Lyra gasped, her eyes drawn to it. She reached out, her fingers tracing the glowing lines, almost in a trance. Lyra, careful, Thaddeus warned, sensing an immense power building. But it was too late. As her fingers completed a segment of the pattern, and Thaddeus, still holding her arm to steady her, inadvertently brushed against another part of the glowing circle, a blinding flash of turquoise light erupted from the wall, enveloping them both. Thaddeus felt a sensation like falling and soaring simultaneously. His mind was flooded with Lyra's emotions, a surge of ancient sorrow, a flicker of hope, a deep well of weariness. He felt her hum not just with his ears, but in his very bones, in his soul. And then, an excruciating pain lanced through him, mirrored by a sharp cry from Lyra. It was as if their life forces were being forcibly intertwined, braided together like strands of light. The light faded, leaving them gasping on the dusty ground, the glowing symbols on the wall dimming back into obscurity. Thaddeus tried to push himself up, but a wave of dizziness and nausea hit him. He felt different. Connected, he looked at Lyra. She was pale, her eyes wide with shock and a dawning understanding. What was that? He managed. Lyra touched her chest, then pointed between them. "We are one," she said, her voice trembling. "The Solas'Eth, the weaving of souls. An ancient binding." Before he could process the implications, Jory's voice, distorted by static, crackled in his helmet. "Captain, Cathar destroyer has entered the nebula. It's somehow tracking us! They're launching assault pods directly towards this moonlet." Thaddeus struggled to his feet, his body aching with a strange resonance that echoed Lyra's own discomfort. He could feel her fear, her wariness, as if it were his own. Separation, he instinctively knew, would now be agony, perhaps even fatal. They were bound and their enemies were closing in. Cooperation wasn't just essential for survival anymore. It was an intrinsic part of their new, shared existence. The ancient terraforming device had imprisoned her, but this ancient temple, in its own mysterious way, had bound them together in a fate far more complex. The unexpected union had truly begun. The ground shuddered again, this time from the impact of Cathar assault pods landing nearby. The guttural roars of their warriors echoed through the thin atmosphere. Thaddeus pulled Lyra to her feet. "We need to move now? Can you run?" Lyra nodded, her amethyst eyes wide with a mixture of fear and a new, strange awareness that mirrored his own. As they began to run deeper into the ruins, Thaddeus was acutely aware of her presence beside him, not just physically, but as a tangible sensation in his mind, a faint echo of her thoughts, her quickening heartbeat. When she stumbled, he felt a sympathetic jolt in his own leg. This weaving of souls was no subtle enchantment. It was a profound, biological and perhaps even spiritual entanglement. "This way," Lyra urged, surprisingly agile despite her earlier ordeal. She seemed to navigate the labyrinthine ruins with an uncanny familiarity, her hand gesturing towards shadowed alcoves and crumbling stairwells that Thaddeus would have dismissed as dead ends. Her shadow diplomat instincts, perhaps, or something deeper, awakened by the temple's energies and their bond. "How do you know these paths?" Thaddeus panted, as they squeezed through a narrow crevice. "They sing to me," Lyra replied, her hum a low, urgent thrum that seemed to guide them. "The stones remember." Cathar warriors, hulking brutes in spiked armor, carrying crude but deadly energy weapons, were hot on their trail. Their snarling pursuit echoed behind them. Thaddeus fired his sidearm, a peacekeeper standard pulse blaster, taking down one of the warriors. but two more took its place. "They're relentless?" he grunted, pushing Lyra ahead of him. "They desire the Caliph," Lyra said, her voice tight. "My people. They hunt us for our gifts." Her rapid healing, her unique biological resonance, valuable commodities for a species obsessed with creating the perfect soldier. As they scrambled over a pile of fallen masonry, a Cathar plasma bolt struck the ground near Lyra's feet, sending her sprawling. She cried out, and Thaddeus felt a sharp, searing pain in his own ankle, so intense he nearly fell. He looked down. His ankle was fine. It was her pain he was feeling. She clutched her leg, her face pale. "Lyra!" He was by her side in an instant. The scorch mark on her boot was already fading, her skin beneath regenerating, but the phantom pain in his own limb was a stark reminder of their connection. I am healing," she gasped. "But the echo, you feel it?" "All too well," Thaddeus said grimly. He helped her up. "This bonding mechanism, it's a two-edged sword." They found temporary refuge in a subterranean chamber, the entrance hidden behind a curtain of petrified vines. The Cathar patrols thundered past overhead. In the dim light filtering from cracks in the ceiling, they took stock. "We can't stay here long," Thaddeus said, checking his blaster's charge. "They'll come every inch of these ruins." Lyra was tracing patterns on the dusty floor with her finger, her hum a low, meditative drone. It was another ritual. Thaddeus started to protest, then stopped himself. Her earlier ritual on the pod, while he'd been impatient, had preceded their finding this moonlit, this temporary sanctuary. Perhaps there was a method to her mysticism. "What are you doing?" he asked, his tone softer this time. "Seeking resonance," Lyra murmured, not looking up. "The Cathar are discordant. They break the patterns. There are older currents here, paths they cannot sense." Suddenly, her hum changed, becoming more focused, more intense. She looked up, her eyes shining. "There is a place, a conduit. Deep below. It will shield us, and it may hold answers." Thaddeus, despite his practical nature, found himself believing her. The bond between them was more than just shared pain. He could feel the certainty in her, the pull towards this hidden place. Led the way, Lyra Nova. Their journey deeper into the moonlet's crust was fraught with peril. They navigated treacherous chasms, bypassed ancient, dormant traps that Lyra somehow sensed, and constantly evaded Cathar search parties. During one close call, hiding in a narrow fissure, they were pressed so close Thaddeus could feel the warmth of her skin, the delicate rhythm of her breathing. Her hum was a tangible presence between them, soothing his frayed nerves, and he found himself unconsciously synchronizing his own breathing to its cadence. He felt a strange pull towards her, an emotion that went beyond the enforced proximity of their bond, something tender and protective. Lyra, in turn, was slowly opening up. She told him of her people, the Caliph, who lived in secluded enclaves, attuned to the subtle energies of the galaxy, keepers of ancient knowledge. They were not warriors, but scholars, artisans, like her, Caliph Shah, shadow diplomats, who worked unseen to maintain delicate balances. "The Cathar believe our rapid healing, our harmonic resonance can be weaponized," she explained, her voice tinged with sorrow. "They have hunted us for generations, seeking to pervert our life force into an engine of war. The terraforming device, it was an ancient Caliph sanctuary, corrupted, turned into a prison for me. I was trying to understand its decay, to heal it when it fully malfunctioned." Thaddeus listened, his respect for her growing. She was not just some damsel in distress, but a resilient individual fighting for her people's survival, entrusted with a heavy burden. His peacekeeper instincts to protect the innocent were now amplified by a personal connection he couldn't deny. They encountered a Cathar patrol equipped with a new device, a sonic dampener that specifically targeted Lyra's hum. As the jarring frequency washed over them, Lyra cried out, clutching her head. Her vibrant hum dissolved into a painful static, and her healing ability visibly faltered as a stray shot grazed her arm. The wound now bleeding freely, healing at a near-human rate. Thaddeus felt a debilitating wave of nausea and disorientation through the bond. This was her weakness, a disruption of her body's natural harmonic field. Enraged, Thaddeus attacked with renewed ferocity, his bravery fueled by Lyra's distress. He managed to destroy the dampener and drive off the Cathar, but Lyra was weakened, shaken. He gently cleaned and bandaged her arm, the simple act feeling strangely intimate. "That frequency, it undoes me," she whispered, leaning against him for support. Her hum was slowly, weakly returning. "We'll protect you from it," Thaddeus vowed, his hand lingering on her arm. He felt her shiver, but not from cold. Later, as they rested in a relatively secure cavern, Lyra spoke of the Aethel Tides. "It is not a place, Thaddeus," she explained, her voice soft, her hum regaining its soothing melody as she recovered. "It is the breath of the cosmos, the flow of pure life energy. My people are its guardians, not its owners. The Cathar seek to dam these tides, to forge them into chains and swords. They believe I carry the star chart of echoes. Not a map in your sense, but a resonance key, a way to attune to the tides, to draw upon their power. It is part of my very being, encoded in my Caliph heritage." Thaddeus looked at her, at the earnest light in her amethyst eyes, the gentle pulse of her hum, that now felt as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. The weight of her responsibility, the danger she was in, settled heavily upon him. He understood now why the Cathar were so relentless. Control of such a power would make them unstoppable. "Then we must ensure they never get it," he said, his voice firm. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing her cheek. "We're in this together, Lyra. For whatever reason, fate, or this ancient temple, has bound us. I won't let them take you. I won't let them corrupt the Aethel Tides." Lyra leaned into his touch, her eyes searching his. A new chord entered her hum, a note of nascent hope, of fragile trust. "Thaddeus," she began, then hesitated. The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken emotions, with the dawning realization that their bond, born of crisis and alien magic, was rapidly transforming into something far deeper, something that felt terrifyingly like love. The universe had thrown them together in the most unexpected of unions, and now, across the stars, they would have to fight not just for their lives, but for the future of that burgeoning, tender connection, and perhaps for the sanctity of life itself. The Cathar, frustrated by their elusive prey, escalated their tactics. A chilling broadcast echoed through the ruins, the guttural voice of a Cathar warlord named Kro'Mar, promising excruciating torment for Lyra and a slow death for her protector unless they surrendered. He spoke of their unique symbiotic state, revealing that Cathar sensors had detected the energy signature of the weaving of souls, a delightful new variable for our hybridization matrix. Kro'Mar had sneered. 2 specimens, 1 bond. Exquisite. The threat chilled Thaddeus to the core. The Cathar didn't just want Lyra anymore, they wanted them both, as a package deal, a ready-made experiment. Lyra's hum faltered, a wave of despair washing over her that Thaddeus felt as a cold dread in his own stomach. "They know," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "They understand what this Solas'Eth means. They will try to replicate it, to force it upon others, to create more controlled pairs for their armies. We won't let that happen," Thaddeus said, his jaw tight. He pulled her closer, a protective instinct surging through him, amplified by the bond. "We need to get off this moonlit. Jory, any chance the Serenity made it through?" "Negative, Captain." Jory's voice, faint but clear, replied through his calm. "The Serenity was forced to jump to an emergency beacon rendezvous point far from this sector. They sustained heavy damage. No immediate extraction possible. You are on your own." The news was a blow, but not unexpected. They were truly alone. Their journey through the moonlet's depths continued, driven by Lyra's intuitive guidance and Thaddeus's grim determination. The forced proximity, the shared danger, stripped away pretenses. Lyra's initial regal reserve gave way to moments of vulnerability, and Thaddeus's professional stoicism softened, revealing the compassionate man beneath the peacekeeper armor. One evening, huddled for warmth in a narrow geothermal vent, that Lyra had found her hum resonating pleasantly with the natural heat they spoke of their pasts. Thaddeus described his upbringing on a frontier world, his reasons for joining the peacekeepers, his belief in a just galaxy, however often that belief was tested. Lyra, in turn, shared memories of her Caliph enclave, a place of music, light, and profound connection to the natural universe. She spoke of the elders who had taught her the sacred duty of the Caliph Shah, and the sorrow of seeing her people dwindle under the constant threat of the Cathar. As she spoke, her hum wove a soft counterpoint to her words, painting pictures in Thaddeus's mind, conveying emotions that language alone could not. He found himself utterly captivated, not just by her story, but by her. The way the faint light caught the iridescent sheen of her skin, the depth in her amethyst eyes, the very music of her being. During a particularly hazardous traverse across a crumbling bridge spanning a bottomless chasm, Thaddeus slipped. His footing gone, he dangled precariously, Lyra's grip on his arm the only thing keeping him from falling into the abyss. The strain on her was immense, but she held fast, her hum spiking into a fierce, determined cry. He felt her strength, her fear for him, as keenly as his own. With a surge of adrenaline, fueled by their shared will, he found a handhold and pulled himself back to safety. They collapsed onto the narrow ledge, gasping for breath. Lyra's hand was still gripping his arm, her fingers trembling. He looked at her, her face smudged with dust, her eyes luminous with relief. "You saved me," he said, his voice hoarse. "We saved each other," Lyra corrected softly, her gaze locked with his. "Our bond, it gave me strength I did not know I possessed." In that moment, surrounded by danger and uncertainty, the raw emotion between them became undeniable. Thaddeus reached out, his thumb gently brushing a smudge of dirt from her cheek. Her skin was soft, warm, and her hum intensified, a melodic purr that vibrated through his fingertips, sending a shiver down his spine. He leaned in, drawn by an irresistible force, and her eyes fluttered closed as his lips met hers. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened, a confluence of shared fear, relief, and a burgeoning, desperate love. It was a kiss that sealed their unexpected union, a defiant spark of warmth against the cold indifference of the void and the malice of their enemies. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the air around them seemed to shimmer. Lyra's hum was a symphony, complex and beautiful, resonating with joy and a profound, soul-deep connection. "Thaddeus," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I have not felt such resonance since before the great sorrow fell upon my people." "I feel it too, Lyra," he admitted, his own heart pounding. "Whatever this bond is, it's more." Their shared journey now had a new dimension. The fight for survival was inextricably linked with the fight for this precious, fragile love. They learned to anticipate each other's moves, to draw strength from the bond. Lyra's rituals, once a source of mild frustration for Thaddeus, became moments of shared focus. He would stand guard while she traced her complex patterns, her hum creating a shield of serenity that calmed his battle-worn spirit. In turn, his practical skills, his unwavering courage, he provided her with a sense of security she had not known for a long time. They discovered that Lyra's hum, when she was calm and focused, could subtly influence simple technology, causing Cathar surveillance drones to malfunction or energy locks to release. Her rapid healing, too, became a shared asset. After a skirmish where Thaddeus took a nasty plasma burn to his arm, Lyra pressed her hand over the wound. Her hum deepened, focusing into an intense, warm vibration. He felt a tingling sensation and watched in amazement as the burned skin knitted itself together, the pain receding as if by magic. The process was intimate, her touch gentle, her concern for him palpable in the soothing waves of her hum. "The Aethel Tides flow through all Calith," she explained softly, her cheek resting against his shoulder as she worked. "When the bond is strong, when the heart is open, we can channel it more purely. For you, Thaddeus, my heart is very open." Their feelings now acknowledged gave them renewed purpose. They weren't just running anymore. Lyra knew that Kro'Mar wouldn't stop. His interest in the Aethel Tides was an obsession. "He has a research facility," Lyra said one night, her voice grim as they studied a crude map she'd drawn from memory and intuition on a piece of salvaged metal. "A place where he twists life, where he tries to unlock the secrets of creation for his warmongering. It's called Valkar, the Forge of Whispers. It is there he would take us. It is there he would try to dissect the star chart of echoes from my very soul, and our bond from our joined spirits. Then that's where we need to look for a way to fight back," Thaddeus declared. "If we can disrupt his research, perhaps even destroy it, we can strike a real blow against the Cathar." It was a reckless, almost suicidal idea, but the thought of Lyra of them, in Kro'Mar's hands, was unbearable. "It is a fortress," Lyra cautioned, though a spark of defiance lit her eyes. "Guarded by his most elite warriors, filled with horrors. We've faced horrors before," Thaddeus said, taking her hand. "And we faced them together." He squeezed her fingers. "Besides, they'll be expecting us to run. They won't expect us to bring the fight to them." Their objective shifted. No longer were they merely fugitives. They were now a two-person insurgency, armed with a peacekeeper's courage, a Calith's ancient wisdom, and a bond that made them more than the sum of their parts. The Cathar wanted them as key components for a perfect soldier. They would instead become the wrench in the gears of their war machine. The stakes had never been higher, their connection never more vital. The path ahead led towards Valkar, towards the heart of the Cathar war machine, and towards a confrontation that would test their love, their courage, and their very existence. The journey to Valkar, Kro'Mar's infamous Forge of Whispers, was a desperate gamble. Jory, through intermittent, crackling transmissions from Thaddeus's damaged comm unit, managed to piece together fragmented intelligence on the Cathar facility. It was located on a barren, volcanic moon orbiting a dying star, a place deliberately chosen for its isolation and inhospitable environment, a perfect crucible for Kro'Mar's twisted creations. Valkar is more than a research station, Captain, Jory warned, her synthesized voice strained. It's a vast, automated factory complex, churning out war machines and processing biological material. Security will be extreme. The chances of infiltration are minimal. Minimal is not zero, Jory. Thaddeus replied, his gaze fixed on the swirling, angry reds of the dying star system on their stolen Cathar scout ship's navigation display. They had managed to overpower a Cathar patrol, a brutal, close-quarters fight where their bond had proven decisive, their shared awareness allowing them to react as one. Lyra's hum, amplified by her adrenaline and focused intent, had momentarily scrambled the Cathar's neural interfaces, giving Thaddeus the opening he needed. The Cathar used sonic frequencies extensively in their technology. Lyra mused, her fingers tracing the scout ship's unfamiliar controls. Their ships, their weapons, they all have a resonant signature. If I can find the counter-resonance, perhaps a Caliph dissonance chant. Could you disrupt their systems? Thaddeus asked, hope flaring. Disrupt, perhaps. Confuse. But it would take immense concentration, and it would make me vulnerable. She touched her throat, a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. The memory of the sonic dampener was still fresh. As they neared Valkar, the oppressive presence of the Cathar war machine grew. The space around the volcanic moon was littered with automated weapon platforms and patrol drones. Thaddeus, using his peacekeeper knowledge of military tactics, navigated them through the sensor nets, relying on stealth and Lyra's intuitive ability to sense the flow of Cathar patrols, as if she could hear the discordant rhythm of their movements. Their stolen scout ship, disguised with jury-rigged Cathar transponder codes, managed to slip through the outer defenses and land in a secluded lava tube miles from the main complex. The heat was intense, the air thick with sulfur. According to Caliph lore, Lyra said, her voice hushed as they prepared for the infiltration, places of great imbalance, like this moon, like Valkar, have fractures. Weak points in their energetic structure. A ritual of attunement might reveal them. Thaddeus, who once would have chafed at the delay, now watched with quiet respect as Lyra began her preparations. She drew intricate symbols in the volcanic dust, with a shard of obsidian, her hum weaving a complex, searching melody that seemed to probe the very fabric of the hostile environment. He stood guard, his senses heightened by their bond, feeling the oppressive weight of the Cathar presence, the thrum of the distant factories, and beneath it all, the fragile, determined music of Lyra's ritual. After what felt like an eternity, Lyra opened her eyes, a faint sheen of sweat on her brow. There, she said, pointing towards a sheer cliff face. A dormant thermal vent. It leads deep beneath the primary factory to the older geothermal tunnels. Unused. Forgotten, the Cathar in their arrogance build upon, but rarely understand, the foundations. The approach was arduous. They rappelled into the lightless vent, the only illumination from Thaddeus's helmet lamp, and the faint, bioluminescent glow that sometimes emanated from Lyra's skin when she was deeply focused. The bond was a constant reassurance in the oppressive darkness, a silent conversation that flowed between them, caution, encouragement, shared determination. He felt her anxieties about what lay ahead, and she, his unwavering resolve to protect her, to see this through. Deep within the geothermal tunnels, the distant thrum of Valkar's machinery became a palpable vibration in the rock. The air grew fouler, tinged with chemical fumes and something else, something indefinably horrid that spoke of unnatural processes. They found an access point, a corroded maintenance hatch leading into the lower levels of the factory. Thaddeus used his multi-tool to bypass the ancient lock, while Lyra maintained a low, steady hum, designed to mask their energy signatures from any nearby Cathar sensors. The interior of Valkar was a nightmarish vision of cold metal and cruel efficiency. Automated assembly lines churned out sleek, deadly Cathar war drones. Conveyor belts carried strange, organic components towards unseen destinations. and everywhere, there was the oppressive sense of surveillance, of countless unseen eyes. Kro'Mar's primary laboratory, and the hybridization chambers, they will be in the central spire. Lyra whispered, her hand instinctively finding Thaddeus's. That is where he conducts his most abominable work, and where he will likely hold the data on the Aethel Tides, if he has managed to extract any. Then that's our target, Thaddeus affirmed. Destroy the research, destroy the data, and if possible, Kro'Mar himself. Their infiltration proceeded with agonizing slowness. They moved through ventilation shafts, service corridors, and darkened storage bays, Lyra's senses, amplified by her Caliph nature and the bond, proving invaluable in detecting patrols and automated defenses. Thaddeus, in turn, handled the physical obstacles, his peacekeeper training allowing them to bypass security systems and neutralize lone sentries silently and efficiently. During one tense moment, hiding in the shadow of a massive, dormant war machine, a Cathar technician passed uncomfortably close. Lyra instinctively pressed herself against Thaddeus, her body trembling slightly. He wrapped an arm around her, feeling the frantic pulse of her hum against his chest. He focused on projecting calm, reassurance, through their bond, and felt her fear slowly subside, her hum steadying. In these shared moments of peril, their love was not a distraction, but a source of incredible strength, a silent vow to protect each other at all costs. They discovered a schematic of the central spire. It was heavily fortified, but Lyra noticed something. The spire draws immense power directly from the moon's geothermal core. She observed, tracing a network of conduits on the display, and it vents waste heat and processed material through a primary exhaust system that runs beneath the main labs. If we could introduce a cascading overload, a chain reaction. Thaddeus finished, a grim understanding dawning. It would cripple the facility, perhaps even cause a total collapse. But the risk is immense, Lyra agreed. But what choice do we have? To allow Kro'Mar to continue his work, to pervert the Aethel Tides, to enslave others with forced bonds, it is unthinkable. Their plan crystallized: reach the central spire, locate Kro'Mar's lab and the hybridization data, plant charges to initiate an overload in the geothermal power regulators, and escape during the ensuing chaos. It was a suicide mission dressed up as strategy, but it was their only hope of striking a meaningful blow. As they ascended towards the spire's upper levels, the atmosphere grew colder, more sterile, the sounds of the factory replaced by the hum of sophisticated medical and genetic equipment. They were nearing Kro'Mar's sanctum. The final confrontation was drawing inexorably closer, and with it, the ultimate test of their unexpected union, their courage and their love, forged in the crucible of war and blossoming across the unforgiving stars. The air in the central spire of Valkar was cold, sterile, and thick with the unspoken horrors of Kro'Mar's experiments. Silent, automated medical drones glided through the corridors, their optical sensors glowing an ominous red. Thaddeus and Lyra moved like ghosts, their every step measured, their senses screaming with tension. The bond between them was a taut wire, humming with shared anxiety and grim resolve. They reached the entrance to what the schematic had labeled the Bioforge Prime, Kro'Mar's main laboratory. The doors were massive reinforced plasteel, etched with Cathar symbols of conquest and brutal efficiency. This is it, Lyra whispered, her hum almost inaudible, suppressed to avoid detection. She could feel the discordant energies within, the perversion of life that Kro'Mar championed. Thaddeus nodded, his hand resting on the grip of his pulse blaster. Jory, if you can still hear me, any updates on security patterns within this section? Only static answered. They were truly cut off. We do this ourselves. Thaddeus said, his gaze meeting Lyra's. He saw fear there, yes, but also a fierce determination that mirrored his own. He squeezed her hand. Together, using a sequence Lyra had deciphered from Cathar data fragments, a ritualistic access code, surprisingly, that appealed to their species' ingrained respect for hierarchical patterns, they managed to override the door controls. The massive portals hissed open, revealing a vast, circular chamber. The sight within stole their breath. Row upon row of stasis tubes lined the walls, containing grotesque parodies of life creatures, hideously melded from different species, some still twitching, others mercifully inert. In the center of the chamber, on a raised platform, bathed in harsh analytical light, was a complex apparatus of surgical arms and genetic sequencers, all focused on a single, empty cradle. This was where Kro'Mar intended to create his perfect soldier, where he planned to dissect Lyra's essence, her connection to the Aethel Tides, and their unique bond. And standing before it, his back to them, was warlord Kro'Mar himself. He was even larger and more imposing than his broadcast suggested, his crimson armor gleaming, his scaled head bent in contemplation of his unholy altar. So, Kro'Mar's deep, rasping voice echoed through the chamber without turning. The prey walks willingly into the abattoir. How inconveniently brave. He turned slowly, his reptilian eyes, cold and ancient, fixing on them. A cruel smile stretched his lipless mouth. Captain Thaddeus Lumen, the misguided peacekeeper, and Lyra Nova, the errant Caliph, and their anomaly. Your little bond, fascinating. My researchers are eager to study its mechanics before termination. Your research ends tonight, Kro'Mar. Thaddeus snarled, raising his blaster. Kro'Mar chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. Optimism, a quaint human trait. You cannot stop progress, Captain. The Cathar will achieve perfection. We will become the ultimate life form, masters of all creation, and the Aethel Tides will be the engine of our ascendance. Cathar shock troopers, previously unseen, materialized from alcoves around the chamber, their weapons trained on Thaddeus and Lyra. It seems we are outnumbered, Lyra murmured, but her voice held no surrender. Her hum began to rise, subtly at first, then gaining strength, a clear, defiant melody against the harsh thrum of the Cathar machinery. The fight erupted. Thaddeus laid down covering fire, his shots precise, forcing the Cathar troopers to take cover. Lyra, moving with a grace that belied the chaos, darted towards a control console for the stasis tubes. Her hum intensified, focused into a disruptive wave. These beings, they suffer, she cried. I will release them from this torment, if not from life. Consoles sparked and overloaded as her harmonic assault hit them. Some stasis tubes opened, their occupants, dazed and confused, adding to the chaos. Kro'Mar roared in anger. Insolent Caliph! You will not interfere? He strode forward, drawing a wicked-looking energy scythe. Thaddeus engaged Kro'Mar, their battle a desperate dance of blaster fire against energized blade. Kro'Mar was immensely strong, his movements deceptively fast. Thaddeus fought with all his skill, his bravery pushed to its limits. But the warlord was a terrifying opponent. Meanwhile, Lyra had reached the primary data core, where Kro'Mar's research on the Aethel Tides and hybridization was stored. She placed her hands upon it, her hum shifting into a complex Caliph chant of unmaking. This corrupted knowledge, it must be silenced. But Kro'Mar was not so easily distracted. Seeing Lyra at the data core, he disengaged from Thaddeus with a powerful blow that sent the peacekeeper sprawling, his blaster skittering away. Kro'Mar then activated a device on his wrist gauntlet. A high-pitched, screeching frequency filled the lab, the same sonic attack that had crippled Lyra on the moonlet. Lyra screamed, her hum shattering into painful dissonance. She stumbled, clutching her head, her connection to the data core severed. Her rapid healing faltered. A deep crimson stain began to spread on her arm, where a stray Cathar shot had grazed her earlier, a wound that should have already vanished. Her critical weakness brutally exploited. Thaddeus, she cried, her voice laced with agony, the bond transmitting her pain directly into his mind, a wave of crippling nausea and disorientation. Seeing Lyra fall, seeing her pain, Thaddeus felt a surge of cold fury that transcended his own injuries. He scrambled for his blaster, but Kro'Mar was already advancing on Lyra, his scythe raised. No, Caliph, Kro'Mar snarled. You will learn obedience. No, Thaddeus roared. He launched himself at Kro'Mar, weaponless, a desperate, sacrificial tackle. He slammed into the warlord's side, knocking him off balance, away from Lyra. Kro'Mar, enraged, brought the butt of his scythe down on Thaddeus's shoulder with crushing force. Pain exploded through Thaddeus, white-hot and absolute. He felt bone snap. Lyra, witnessing Thaddeus fall, her love for him, her protector, now so grievously injured for her sake, felt something within her snap. The sonic assault was agony, her healing was failing, but the sight of Thaddeus, broken and defenseless because of her, ignited a spark of defiance that burned brighter than any pain. Her Caliph heritage, the deep connection to the Aethel Tides she had so carefully guarded, surged through her, not as a gentle flow, but as a raging torrent. Her hum returned, not the melodic strains of before, but a focused, powerful wave of pure sonic energy, tinged with the raw power of the Aethel Tides themselves. It was a sound of profound sorrow and incandescent fury, a resonance that shook the very foundations of the laboratory. The Cathar troopers clutched their helmets, their own sonic weaponry turning against them, overloading. The sonic dampener Kro'Mar wielded sparked and died. Kro'Mar himself recoiled, his reptilian eyes wide with disbelief. Impossible! Such power from a mere Caliph! Lyra, channeling all her will, all her love for Thaddeus, all her grief for her people, pushed the wave of energy outwards. It wasn't just sound, it was life force, weaponized by despair and love. The stasis tubes shattered. The delicate machinery of the bioforge overloaded. The data core containing Kro'Mar's research erupted in a shower of sparks, its contents wiped clean. This forge of whispers will fall silent, Lyra declared, her voice resonating with power. She stumbled towards the geothermal power regulators they had identified earlier. Thaddeus's discarded demolition charges still clutched in her hand. With her last ounce of strength, she armed them and slammed them onto the primary conduit. Thaddeus, she cried, rushing to his side. He was barely conscious, his face pale with pain. We have to go, Kro'Mar, recovering, let out a bellow of pure rage. You will not escape. Valkar will be your tomb. But the factory was already tearing itself apart. Alarms blared. Explosions rocked the spire. Lyra, her strength failing, half dragged, half carried Thaddeus towards an emergency escape chute they had noticed earlier. One designed for drone disposal. It was their only chance. As they tumbled into the darkness of the chute, the charges detonated. A catastrophic chain reaction ripped through the geothermal core. The central spire of Valkar Kro'Mar's Forge of Whispers buckled, groaned, and then began to collapse in upon itself, a fiery vortex of destruction consuming the Cathar warlord and his abominable creations. Lyra held on to Thaddeus tightly as they were spewed out of the chute and into the sulphurous, chaotic atmosphere of the moon, just as the ground beneath Valkar gave way. They were falling, the inferno of the destroyed factory lighting their descent. Their fight was over, but their survival was far from certain. The ejection from the collapsing Valkar was violent, uncontrolled. Lyra clung to Thaddeus, shielding his unconscious form with her own as they tumbled through the ash-choked air. The heat from the moon's volcanic surface and the inferno of the destroyed Cathar factory seared around them. Their stolen scout ship was miles away, an impossible distance. This, Lyra thought with a pang of despair, might truly be the end. They crashed, not onto the jagged volcanic rock as she'd feared, but into a deep, surprisingly soft drift of gray ash, perhaps from a recent eruption, cushioning their impact just enough. Lyra gasped for breath, the sulphurous air burning her lungs. The bond thrummed with Thaddeus's pain, a dull, agonizing ache that mirrored her own exhaustion. She gently rolled him over. His face was deathly pale, his breathing shallow and ragged. The shoulder Kro'Mar had struck was a mangled ruin. Blood seeped through his torn peacekeeper uniform. Her own injuries, while less severe, were still significant. The Cathar sonic weapon had taken its toll, and her usual rapid healing was sluggish, hampered by her exertion and the lingering toxic environment. Thaddeus, she whispered, her voice hoarse, tears tracing paths through the grime on her cheeks. Thaddeus, stay with me. His eyelids fluttered. Lyra, he breathed, a faint smile touching his lips. Did we win? We stopped them, my love? She choked out. Valkar is gone. Kro'Mar is gone. A tremor of satisfaction passed through him via the bond, quickly followed by a wave of intense pain that made him cry out. Lyra knew she had to act fast. Her own healing was slowly reasserting itself as the immediate sonic threat receded, but Thaddeus didn't have that luxury. Hold on, she murmured, placing her hands on his shattered shoulder. She closed her eyes, focusing all her remaining strength, all her will, all the love that now defined her existence. She reached deep within herself, calling upon the faint, residual echoes of the Aethel Tides that her desperate act in the laboratory had unleashed. Her hum began, weak at first, then growing, a melody of pure, concentrated life energy. It wasn't the destructive wave from before, but a gentle, insistent song of restoration. The ash around them seemed to shimmer. A faint, pearlescent glow emanated from her hands, seeping into Thaddeus's wounds. She could feel the broken bones, the torn tissues, and she guided the energy coaxing mending. It was an agonizingly slow process, draining her reserves, but she persisted, fueled by a love that defied logic, that transcended species. Thaddeus's pain transmitted through the bond, gradually lessened, replaced by a surprised warmth. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Slowly, miraculously, under her touch, the bleeding stopped. The grotesque angle of his shoulder began to normalize. Color returned to his face, his breathing deepened. The bond, which had been a conduit for his agony, now pulsed with a shared sense of relief, of life rekindled. When she finally drew back, exhausted but triumphant, Thaddeus was looking at her, his eyes clear, filled with awe, and an emotion so profound it made her heart ache. "Lyra," he whispered, his voice stronger. He reached up with his good hand, gently touching her face. "Again. You saved me again. And you me countless times," she replied, leaning into his touch. "It seems to be our pattern." Their bond, tested in the crucible of Valkar, had not only survived but had deepened, solidified into something unbreakable. In the wake of the shared danger, their unspoken love was now an explicit, undeniable truth, resonating between them more powerfully than any alien mechanism. As if summoned by their survival, a new sound cut through the roar of the volcanic moon, the distinct whine of approaching ship engines. Not Cathar. These were smoother, more refined. Hope, fragile but persistent, bloomed in Lyra's chest. Through the clearing ash clouds, a sleek, silver vessel descended. It bore the markings of the Caliph High Council, and on its view screen, visible even from this distance, was the concerned face of an elder Caliph she recognized. Her people had come. Perhaps Thaddeus's damaged comm, or the massive energy released from Valkar's destruction, or her own desperate call on the Aethel Tides, had reached them. The Caliph rescue team was efficient, compassionate. They quickly stabilized Thaddeus further, their medical technology augmented by their own healing abilities. Lyra, though weakened, refused to leave his side. As they were lifted away from the dying moon, leaving behind the smoldering ruins of Kro'Mar's ambition, she looked down at the devastation. One battle was won. The Cathar war machine had suffered a significant blow. The immediate threat of Kro'Mar's hybrid soldiers and his perversion of the Aethel Tides was neutralized. On board the Caliph vessel, Lyra learned that the destruction of Valkar had sent shockwaves through the Cathar dominion. Other subjugated species were stirring, inspired by whispers of the Forge of Whispers' fall. Their personal choice, their desperate act of defiance, was already having broader implications. A new era of resistance might be dawning. Later, as Thaddeus rested, recovering with astonishing speed thanks to Caliph healers and Lyra's constant, soothing hum, she sat beside him, holding his hand. "The bond?" she said softly. "The Solas'Eth. My elders say it is exceedingly rare. A true joining, not a curse, but a gift if embraced." Thaddeus turned his head, his eyes clear and bright, finding hers. "It brought me to you, Lyra. It kept us alive. How could it be anything but a gift?" He squeezed her hand. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Their relationship, forged in fire and sacrifice, was no longer a secret or an accident. It was a conscious choice, a beacon. In the aftermath of destruction, they had found not just survival, but a profound affirmation of their love. A promise of a new beginning, not just for themselves, but perhaps for a galaxy weary of war. A standard galactic year had passed since the fall of Valkar. The Caliph vessel, the Starlight Whisper, drifted silently through the vibrant currents of the Aethel Tides, no longer a myth or a mere source of power, but a recognized cosmic phenomenon whose sanctity was now fiercely protected by a fledgling alliance inspired by the events on Kro'Mar's moon. On the ship's observation deck, bathed in the soft, ever-shifting light of the tides, stood Thaddeus Lumen and Lyra Nova. Thaddeus, no longer in his peacekeeper uniform but in comfortable, Caliph-inspired attire, bore only faint scars from his ordeal, a testament to Lyra's healing and Caliph medicine. His arm was fully restored, his strength returned, but a deeper change was evident in his eyes, a quiet wisdom, a serenity that mirrored the Caliph he had come to know and love. Lyra, radiant and confident, was no longer just a Caliph Shah, a shadow diplomat. She had become a voice for her people, a bridge between their ancient wisdom and the burgeoning galactic community seeking alternatives to endless conflict. Her musical hum, once a curiosity or a weapon, was now a symbol of hope and interspecies understanding, often weaving harmonies with the subtle music of the Aethel Tides themselves. Their bond, the Solas'Eth, remained as strong as ever, a silent, constant conversation of love, support, and shared purpose. It was no longer a source of phantom pains, but of shared joys, heightened senses, and an intuitive understanding that transcended words. Their union had become a legend whispered across star systems, the human peacekeeper and the deep dweller healer, whose love defied empires and sparked a new dawn. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Lyra said softly, her gaze lost in the swirling nebulae of life energy outside the viewport. Her hum was a gentle counterpoint to the cosmic symphony. Thaddeus slipped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. It is. And so are you. He pressed a kiss to her temple. A year ago, I was just a soldier following orders, rescuing a mysterious woman from a collapsing machine. Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder. And I was a fugitive, carrying the weight of my people's survival, fearing the darkness that hunted me. And now? Thaddeus prompted gently. Now, Lyra said, turning in his embrace, her amethyst eyes shining with love and hope, we are guardians, healers, ambassadors for a different way. Together. Their work was far from over. The Cathar, though fractured, were still a threat. The galaxy was still rife with misunderstanding and conflict. But now, there was a path forward, illuminated by the courage of individuals and the power of unexpected unions. Thaddeus and Lyra, through their shared journey, had helped to chart that path. They had found healing from their personal traumas, Thaddeus, from the cynicism of war, Lyra from the burden of her hunted existence, and discovered a new, shared purpose. The Galactic Council has formally invited the Caliph to join as full members, Thaddeus said, a note of pride in his voice. Your speech, Lyra, it moved them. They're finally beginning to understand that strength isn't just about warships and blasters. It was our story they listened to, Thaddeus, Lyra corrected gently. A story of unexpected union across the stars, fighting for love and new life. She smiled, her hum swelling with affection. It seems to be a popular theme. He chuckled, his heart full. He looked out at the vast expanse of space, no longer just a battlefield or an empty void, but a place of infinite possibility, of connections waiting to be made. With Lyra by his side, their souls forever intertwined, any future felt possible, bright with the promise of peace and the enduring strength of their love. A new beginning had truly dawned, not just for them, but for all who dared to look to the stars and dream of a better way.